Hello and welcome to CVG's preview of Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. I am James Jarvis and I am joined by Metal Gear Solid expert Dan Dawkins. Hello Dan.
Yeah, hi there.
Hi. Right, so what we're going to do in this preview is we're going to take you through what exactly you get in the game. We're going to look at the new gameplay, how it's changed since Metal Gear Solid 4. We're going to take a look at the Fox engine and how it compares across different consoles, and then at the end we'll give you our opinion of the game, which we have played in full at a very recent event. If you want to skip to any of these sections, you can by clicking the links on the screen now, but if you don't, we're going to get straight in right now with what is Metal Gear Ground Zeroes and what exactly do you get for your money, Dan?
Yeah, this is the big debate. People are unsure about what Ground Zeroes represents. Essentially, it is a prologue to Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which is due to be released in 2015, possibly even 2016. It's a long way off, so you may as well enjoy this while you've got it. Whilst it is a prologue and essentially a vertical slice of gameplay, many people are calling it demo. It is, I think, more than a standard demo in terms of the additional bonus content, and the fact that the game is designed to be deliberately replayable and in fact encourages that. And we will now go on to outline where the value comes from. Now, the game's coming out on, just to confirm, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and Xbox One. It's out in the USA on March the 18th. It's out in Japan and Europe on March the 20th and the UK on March the 21st. Now, this is quite a novel thing for Konami, if not the world, but the game's going to be joint released on digital and on physical. Now, the game costs £19.99, which is a similar dollar price, and that's on the PS3 and 360 consoles, physical and digital, but it's £29.99 on PS4 and Xbox One, and in fact that's a price drop from what they originally planned to do.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go through a full set of contents for what you get within the game, so should we start going through that?
Yeah, so the main bulk of the game takes place around one main mission, which is the Ground Zeroes mission. So you get all of Camp Omega in that, which is quite a big camp in size, Dan.
Yeah, I was trying to explain this to someone in physical terms, because obviously if I say it's a mile by 2 miles, that means kind of nothing. It reminded me kind of the size of, let's say, your character relative to the size of like all of Trevor's Salton Sea area, but maybe even bigger again.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but it did feel similar to that scale to me.
It was definitely big enough to have different sort of regions in it. Like there was a camp of where the people were being held, but then there was the military bit of it, and so it was like distinct sections. It wasn't all just like cobbled into one tiny area.
Yeah, I think it felt pretty it's not hugely zoned, but it is physically pretty big.
And also on top of that as well, some of the buildings were enterable, so you had interiors as well, which had different floors and things like that. So it was a relatively sized area, I think. So going through that would probably take you between an hour and 2 hours to finish that main mission.
Yeah, it took me 2 hours on my first go to finish that main mission. The main mission consists of essentially two main strands with sub-bits. One is to find and retrieve Chico, who will be familiar to anyone who's played Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. When you find him, then there's a stage where you have to like extract him through your helicopter, which is not as easy as it first sounds. And then there's a second bit where you have to go back and find Paz, which is not a spoiler because that's all in the trailers we've seen so far. Then you have to extract Paz. Then a cutscene plays, which is an expanded version of what we've already seen in trailers, with some stuff you won't be expecting. Then there's kind of a prologue that plays, setting up the events of MGS5. You know, as a huge student of MGS myself, there were not that many fundamental revelations in that footage, but there is a lot more within the package that I go on to explain.
Yeah, so after you finish that main Ground Zeroes mission, you then get to open up 4 side operations, which are things consisting of the same area, or some of them are different areas, right? So you can go and eliminate a renegade threat, which is more of a sneaking and killing mission.
Yep.
You go to intel operative rescue mission, so you have to get in, get a guy, get out on a helicopter. There's a classified intel acquisition, which is there's a guy in a camp and you have to identify him by using your binoculars, finding the guy and then approaching him stealthily and getting some information from him. And then there's destroying anti-air emplacements, which is more of a sort of action-based shooty type mission, which is, you know, not quite as stealthy as the rest of them.
Yeah, and it's the same with the Intel Operative Rescue. The start of that is that you get briefed and told all bets are off. You've got to go in all guns blazing, and you arrive in that section in a chopper, and essentially a kind of on-rail section, but not quite. It's not quite as explicit as that. And there's a variation at the end, and who you retrieve is a really pleasant surprise, saying no more. So each of these side missions, the key thing to say is they're different ways to approach the core game set in the same geography. What each of them gives you is a tangible, useful reward. Now that might be, for example, one of them gives you an audio log tape which is 7 minutes long, which reveals for the first time specifics to the background of Skullface, who's the game's mysterious main villain. I will not speculate on the contents of that here right now because it might be a spoiler, but it has, for me, closed and opened many doors about that character's identity. Ditto the character you retrieve, that will be significant for the next game. They're not wasted in terms of you putting the time in.
No, and also they're quite replayable, as is the main mission, because there are a number of options that you can turn on and off, Dan, that alter your score. And if you want to get like the S ranking, you're going to have to play it totally stealthily and get some of these bonus things. Yeah,
and of course when you've done all that, another objective, each of those missions I think is about, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes depending on how quick you play it. It really is hard to say. You've got to find as well 9 Zoff or XOF badges. They've already been seen in the trailer. It's like the logo worn by Skullface and his crew. It's a mystery about them. It's worth noting you find the first one, it sort of forces you to find the first one as you enter the camp. Something unusual happens in terms of the camera work and how it presents it, suggesting that something about the nature of XOF and what relation it has to the plot. Again, I won't speculate on it here. In my playthrough, the first 2 hours, I found literally no other badges apart from the one I was sort of given. So, I mean, they aren't easy to find, and you need to unlock all of them to get access to the platform-specific exclusive content. So if you're playing on PlayStation, you get what's called the Deja Vu side mission, where you play as classic Solid Snake using old school visuals, and then you've got a set of missions attached to that, one of which is recreating sort of framed camera moments from the first Metal Gear. So it might be like aligning the camera so the camera's in such a position and the vehicles around it that it looks like a scene from MGS, and the game sort of snaps it. But you'll get to see like Psycho Mantis in these scenes and various different things. Now in the Xbox version, which is called Jamais Vu, as in never seen as opposed to already seen, you play as Raiden, and you have to take out zombie-like guards who are actually snatchers, in another reference to Hideo Kojima's game chronology. So yeah, they're quite nice little extras. I didn't get to play them. Say in 6 hours of the play we had in that day, I didn't do enough to unlock these missions.
Yeah, and there are also extra things to collect as well as on top of those missions. So there's like backstories and audio cassettes that you can find, which gives you more hints towards the story. And there's obviously ranking modes and time completion and doing it totally stealthily, or doing it without killing anyone, or doing it with a certain weapon and that kind of stuff.
Your main menu changes after the first time you finish the game. The main menu expands to include new options, which is your playing record, so you can see how well you did. You could trial records, which shows you how other people are doing and how your ranking compares. And there's a cassette tapes option, which sounds banal, but in fact contains a wealth of content. There's things called acquired tapes, which are the ones you find within the level that reveal information about key characters and plot points. There's info things about the missions you did, and there's stuff like Paz's diaries from Peace Walker, and that is much more significant than you'd think, and talks about her path from being like a cipher loyalist, which is something Metal Gear fans might associate, how she becomes a defector, and more complicated things therein. There's also a reference to a sort of I don't know what you call it, like a pseudo-sexual tryst between Big Boss and Kaz Miller in the showers, amongst other things. So there's lots of weird stuff in there. Then there's music tapes, because the game has music tapes you can listen to as you go through, and you can set the music as your helicopter comes in.
Right.
Now people have asked, how does that work on PS4, because you can't insert CDs. I didn't get to see it, I don't know. On the old gen consoles, you can put your CD in and do it that way.
Right, okay. So then on top of all that, finally you've got the iDroid app, which gets on the iOS, Android and Xbox Smart Glass, which basically gives you second screen sync options, like being able to look at your map and things like that. We didn't actually get to have a go with it, but we've got screenshots of it in action.
Yeah, and you can summon air support, which is a bit of a fiddle in the actual game. It plays your music for you, which again is nice and convenient, and it shows you the global rankings of different people on a really clear and easy to understand screen, encouraging replay.
So that is hopefully an explanation of what you get inside the MGS Ground Zeroes. Moving on to the gameplay and just what's changed since Metal Gear 4 and the series in general. Overall, Dan, you think it's a refinement rather than a reinvention?
Yeah, I've played like all the Metal Gear games. I'm aware that they're brilliant, they're deep, but they're fiddly and they don't explain themselves very well. I sort of hated Metal Gear Solid 3 for the first 2 hours until I got it. And when you understand the systems, you realise that you are the master of the guards around you and you can exploit them. It's a difficult place to get to. What Ground Zeroes gives you, I think, is like a more accessible set of tools in line with modern mechanisms. So for example, there are elements that have been lifted from, say, Far Cry, where you use your goggles to tag people, and that just tags them in the camp so you always know where they are relative to you, because they'll glow red and you'll have their position and distance. And ditto this reflex mode, which is people seem to think might be contentious, where if you get spotted by a guard, you get like a 2 to 3 second period of grace where you can take him out. And then if he gets knocked out, the alert doesn't trip.
Yeah, familiar to people who've played Splinter Cell, games like that. It's very similar kind of thing.
Now, they sound like cheats, but they are not making the game necessarily any easier, because the game has changed. Like, gone are the camouflage options, where you used to be able to wear suits and you had like a very specific camouflage rating. Gone is the explicit like radar, be it the Soliton radar or something more advanced. You don't see the guards as blips on a radar screen. You've got to use your actual eyes to assess where they are, and that's why the importance of tagging is so great with the goggles. And also you've got various on-screen prompts that do help. Like when you're under the glare of a guard who might be in a watchtower like way off to the northeast, you'll get like a sort of circle corona appear around your character, suggesting you're being viewed from that side. Now, it is possible to turn all those aids and assists off and make the game even harder for yourself, but you will need the reflex mode, I think, because it's easy to get spotted from afar and suddenly go, oh my god, I just couldn't see him. And at least it buys you a second to get off a headshot, which sounds, again, easier than it actually is, because it's easy to hit a guy with a shot but not actually headshot him, and if he isn't knocked out or killed with that shot, he is going to spot you.
Exactly, and I think the controls have been tweaked slightly for Metal Gear 4 as well. Do you just want to run through exactly what each button does on PS4?
Yeah, I'll power through it. Well, L2 is aiming and like targeting. R2 is your attack button, which doubles up for like punches and also for shooting when you're aiming. Now, this is the big change. Hold R1 and it activates your binoculars. You've got to keep it held to stay in binocular mode. When you're looking at things through R1, through the screen, L1 then becomes effectively your codec or your radio. So you'll receive information live on the fly about what that object is, and it builds out the background to the game. Now, clicking down R3 will operate different levels of zoom, particularly when you're using binoculars. There's 3 levels of zoom, sort of magnification. Now, on the actual pad itself, triangle's your contextual action, which might be unlocking a padlocked door when you're close to something. The D-pad is a sort of standard weapon select where you pull left for one type. I think it's like your automatic weapons. Down is your Mark 22 pistol and various different things. Then on the right you've got grenades and all those things, and you've also got night vision goggles. Again, it's not easy initially to even know what kit you've got, and it's not explained. It's something Metal Gear fans will have to find. You have to experiment with the kit yourself. And selecting it, you sort of press up and then you click with the right stick to go through the sub option within that menu. Then other buttons, X changes your stance in classic Metal Gear style, so you've got sort of crouching, tiptoe, lying flat, crawling, and then the standard walk mode. That can be modified by holding L3 down, which performs a really effective sprint move. Once again, it sounds like cheating. Trust us, the map's so big and there's so many guards, we spent a lot of time, I certainly did, like running like away. A lunatic just through giant, 10 guards shooting at me, running away, praying I could get to cover in time. Now, when there's all sorts of sub-layers to the controls. So, for example, if you're lying flat and aiming through the barrel of the rifle, if you hold down L3 and tap the stick left, he performs a sort of 360-degree barrel roll, allowing you to evade and dodge. It's a really useful technique. And then again, you can, Snake's much more athletic than he was. He can climb up sort of chest level barriers and skip over things, and you can use square to dive as well. So it's just a more flexible way to control the game.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier that some of the things that have been taken out. So taking cover is now like automatic. You know, if you get close to some concrete or things like that, he'll sort of crouch behind it and put his hand up to have a little peek around the corner. Knocking for attention, which is a big thing you used to do in Metal Gear, banging on the walls and doors and things. That's gone now. There's no way of doing that. You can still hold up guards and get them to put their hands in the air and take things off them. And then there's the interrogation moves. So it's in the close quarter combat thing. You get certain options when you perform that. You can either interrogate them or stun them or kill them.
Yeah, it's a bit fiddly. Like if you're used to Metal Gear CQC system from the olden days, now you go into a guy and you grab him from behind with R2. You'll get him in a tight hold. You can choose to make him unconscious or quiz him, but you've got to use like holding down octopus-handed a number of buttons, then use the right stick to select. I did mess it up on a number of occasions, tripping an alert and having to sprint away just to safety. It was an interesting thing you said about hold-ups. I didn't do a single one during the game, so again, it doesn't explain it to you. But it is as simple as getting up to a guy unnoticed and drawing your pistol on him. He will freeze and hold his hands up for a few seconds. You'll see in the video footage we've seen on screen, if you can double that with CQC to hold the guard up, he freezes, you run around him to the other guy, CQC knock him out, then it goes into reflex mode because the other guy spotted you, then you take him out. So it's again showing the depth of the systems to improve the way you play it.
Exactly. There's only a couple of extra things in there then. There's vehicles that you can drive, which gives you a few hints when you get in them about how to drive them, but it's mainly just, you know, the standard accelerate, brake things. But it's quite good driving around the base in a truck because you can actually do it and not get spotted as long as you don't drive like a madman. Yeah,
and you don't sort of linger around control posts and get visually seen. I didn't use a car once in all my 2-hour playthrough, and I didn't need to. Again, it shows there are ways to go back and replay it. What I didn't realise, as our footage will show you, is that you can use the vehicles to trick the guards. It's possible to put C4 on a patrol vehicle, trail the vehicle silently from afar, and then watch it as it enters the main base and trigger it, blowing up the front door and anyone around it. That's amazing. It's worth mentioning about camo, that's gone, but the way you use light and foliage is critical. Like if you lie obviously in grass, the ability of your foes to see you is greatly reduced, as is also when you play in the daytime versus the nighttime, the distance they view you from is also affected by that.
Excellent. So that's a general overview of gameplay and the controls and just how things work. We'll move on to our actual opinions in a second, but just for now, let's move on to the Fox engine tech. And cross-platform comparisons are obviously always going to come up in this case. We know that the Konami have put out an official video showing you the differences between old gen and current gen, but just for the record, PS3 and 360 are running at 720p and scaling up internally. They run at 30 frames a second. PS4 will run at 60 frames a second, 1080p native, so there'll be no scaling. And the Xbox One runs at 60 frames a second as well, but only at 720p. So there is obviously a difference. You can see in Konami's official video just what those differences are. We only played it on PS4, but the stuff we played on PS4 did look very good and it was very smooth.
Yeah, I mean, PS4 is what we played it on. I just thought it looked incredibly slick and smooth. It's worth noting that it's Fox Engine's effectively its debut. It did appear in the last Pro Evolution Soccer, but what it's great at is animation blending. So for when you're playing as Snake, traditionally when you went from kneeling stance to crawling to standing, it was very like, you know, 3 stage, like extending a ladder. What it is now is a very smooth and seamless transition. Ditto when you move into a sprint, it's just much more well animated and looks a lot cleaner. Fox Engine is obviously brilliant at lighting, at smoke, at rain effects. All of this stuff is really reflected. It looks to me like is it the best next gen game I've seen? I don't know. Like, I think maybe when I first saw some of the Battlefield effects, or maybe some of the Killzone effects even, I was slightly more taken aback. But as an overall experience, this is rock solid. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful because the art design is beautiful, and it really is up there as one of, if not the best looking games on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, well, that moves us nicely into the opinion section of just what we thought of the Metal Gear Ground Zeroes that we played it. We played it for a good 6 hours, I would have said, probably.
Yeah.
So from a seasoned Metal Gear perspective, Dan, what do you think it offered the fans of Metal Gear that should encourage them to pick it up?
If you're a Metal Gear Solid fan like me, who's played most of the core games like MGS, MGS2, MGS3, etc., and I played Peace Walker as well, and you know, playing Peace Walker is a nice entry point for this. What it does do is, if you haven't played Peace Walker, is explain the plot of Peace Walker in a manner that made me confused about the plot of Peace Walker in a series of 12 slides at the start that are optional, because you looked at that and found it a bit bewildering.
I looked at it for a bit, yeah, and then there was just like, there was so many words and phrases in there that I understood some of, because I've played, you know, MGS2 and 3 and a bit of 4, but yeah, I mean, I think it made it needlessly complicated.
But as a fan, you will not be disappointed. I was not disappointed. I think the perfect price point probably is £20 in terms of what my mental perception of value is, whatever that means. What I will say is, in 6 hours of play, I didn't feel like I'd exhausted all there was to see. When I left after those 6 hours, I had completed only 25% of all the available things to look at. Everything I did, I felt was giving me worthwhile rewards, whether that was the reward of learning new skills, or whether it was like the tape that explained the background of Skullface, which for me as a student of Metal Gear, I found invaluable and fascinating. I think the back diaries with Paz are fascinating and reveals a new plot point. It's constantly giving you things that are rewards for the Metal Gear fan. I won't even mention some of it because it will be spoilers. So for me, I think as a glimpse of potentially what will be one of the best games on PlayStation 4, probably full stop, it's absolutely essential. Yes, I think, you know, you can quibble over the value, but if you don't want to have that experience, that's the price you've got to pay. You know, you've got to say it's 30 quid, I'm getting a premium experience. Yeah. So for me, totally, I'd go for it.
I think for a Metal Gear fan and completist, it's definitely a worthwhile companion thing to have. It's going to give you a lot of extra backstory and a lot of information that will carry you over into the main game once you get there.
I think the important point to make is a lot of people have said, oh, they've just put in these side missions as filler, they've just done this to artificially extend the value. I'm not even as convinced that's the case. There's an argument you could say that, but what I think is Kojima was giving you very definitely and deliberately a small slice of a game that was eventually going to be 200 times bigger than that. Like, can you imagine, James, a game that's 200 times bigger than what we played?
No, that's
it's a lot. So I think he wants to focus you in to force you to learn deep skills in a controlled environment and through replayability. So when people play the MGS5, they're not going to be absolutely blown away by what it is. There's definitely a degree of this being a business decision by Konami, who, you know, have had various travails financially and through different things recently, where they will want to maximise return and put something on the balance sheet. But I do not think it's purely a cynical exercise by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I think everyone will get something out of this, definitely.
Sorry, but I'm interested in your view, James, because you know something of the series, but you're not an obsessive like me.
I from what we played, I enjoyed it. I probably, being honest, probably wouldn't play it as many times as you would play it. I'd definitely play the main mission and all of the other bits to completion. So I mean, even doing that is going to get you a good sort of 5 hours, 6 hours worth of play out of it, I think. A lot of the tape things and stuff, although giving quite interesting backstories, some of them confused me a bit, just by the nature of them being obviously entwined in this whole Metal Gear universe that I've sort of slipped out of a little bit. But in terms of a game and something that is like a stealth action type game, it's very good and it's very accomplished. There's nothing wrong with it, you know. If it does exactly what you'd expect it to do, and having played Metal Gears in the past, the control system wasn't difficult to get to grips with. Like I was there on top of it pretty early. Everything, all the guards did what you'd expect them to do. There was, I guess, a couple of things when the AI went a bit crazy, but put it on hard mode and, you know, they see a lot further and things like that, so you can give yourself a real challenge to it. And I think, yeah, visually it was good. I think it was, I don't know if it's the best game I've seen on PS4, but it's definitely up there with the likes of like Assassin's Creed 4 on PS4, that kind of visual fidelity that you'd expect from that. And like the rain and other particle effects that were going on, some of the lighting stuff was very impressive.
It's only increased my anticipation for Metal Gear Solid 5. I'm ultra confident that's going to be amazing. So that is the real takeaway from me. You know, again, it's your decision to make whether you think that's worth up to £30 of your money.
Alright, but if you do think it's worth, or if you don't think it's worth that, let us know in the comments below. We're going to be focusing on Metal Gear quite a lot up to release. We've got a few more videos planned, so if you want to see anything or know anything about the game, please let us know in the comments and we will endeavour to help you out.
Yeah, I will be doing a lot more conspiracy-led and plot-led stuff as we get closer to release. I don't want to spoil those things right now. You could, if you want, I'm just shameless plug, James, follow me on @Dan Dawkins, where I'll update more and give you... That's shameless, right?
That's shameless.
I'm going to do it because people can follow me and I'll update them with plot information as it comes. And hopefully there'll be some interesting news about a more continuous strand of Metal Gear programming on the channel quite soon.
Yeah, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.
Chico. No, wait. Who the hell? Snake, you rescued the wrong guy. That's it. He looks like a formidable